Howdy folks, John here. Well, it's that time of year again when DIY ambitions turn to making memorable gifts. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make these rustic wooden reindeer. Now, I've built hundreds of these rustic craftscles over the years, and they make great gifts from the heart. Plus, they also sell out fast at the craft fairs and garden centers. Now, like most rustic build projects, you don't need many tools, and rustic wooden reindeer are both easy and fun to make. Let's get started. I find the best wood to use for building rustic wooden reindeer is woodus availabilis, meaning whatever's available. I'll usually start my search out in the old firewood pile here. Just going to measure up some bodies and heads. I'll go over the approximate size I use for the two different size deers I build, but something's going to be in here for sure. If you don't have a wood pile, it's out to the woods for you. This smaller diameter stuff is perfect for the legs, the neck, the ears, and the tail. You want it fairly straight. This is alder. Willow also works good, but again, woodus availabilis, whatever you can find. Be sure to keep some of these branch ends because we're going to be using these for the antlers. So here I'm just measuring up and cutting a head using a chop saw, which is quick and easy. However, you can also use a hand saw. Just takes a little bit longer. Same goes for the legs, the tail, and the ears. Just using a chop saw to cut those. And it goes pretty much as fast with a hand saw. Those tops of those alders, just using a hand pruner here to size them down for the antlers. And here I'm cutting the bevel for the ears and the tail. Again, with the chop saw it goes really quick, but a hand saw does a good job too. So once you've gathered and cut all your wood, you should have one head, one body, 4 legs, 1 neck, 2 ears, and 1 tail, and 2 sets of antlers. I'll put up the dimensions right now for these 2 sets of deer that I make. And again, this is just my sizing. You can modify it, scale it however you want for your own deer, but these are all the dimensions that I use for mine. And you can stop the video, whatever, pause it, and write this down. For reference, the specific deer I'm going to be demoing the build on here is the little guy, so it's the 14-inch long body, 14-inch long legs. We're going to be fitting the legs to the body using a mortise and tenon joint, so essentially a hole that the leg will slide into. I recommend removing the bark on the leg because as the leg dries, the bark can come off and the leg can get loose. We're going to be pinning it with a screw, but totally your call. You can use a knife just to remove the bark and shape the diameter for whatever hole size you're going to be drilling. I use a tenon cutter because I build so many of these little things and I want consistency. As far as drilling the holes, whatever wood bit you've got on hand. Spade bits work fine. Green bits work okay if you've got green wood. Speaking of green wood, you can build these things with unseasoned wood. It's nicer building them obviously with seasoned dry wood, but it doesn't really matter. If you're selling them at a craft sale though, like I do, yeah, it kind of is nice to have dry wood just for weight reasons. When you're shaping or putting the tenon on your leg, if the leg is tapered, this one's pretty even diameter throughout, but obviously if it's tapered, you want the narrowest at the bottom and the thickest at the top where the tenon is. Just makes it look better. Leg kind of looks funny if it's wider down at the hoof than where it's entering the body. I was using a little workmate here. It works great for this type of project. And I'll just fire the tenon cutter on the end. I'm making 1-inch tenons, but it all depends on the diameter of leg stick you're using. I cut maybe 1.5 inches of tenon on it. Goes really quick. These are really fun to use. Before drilling the legs and the body, kind of just like going over the piece of wood. If there's any damage, it's kind of what you want underneath the deer so no one sees it. Although, you know, it's a rustic piece, some character will actually add to it. So when I do the legs, so I kind of want the bottom to be right here, so the legs will be, you know, kind of like that. So I will position the wood, but I'm going to be going straight down, and then I will turn it to drill the other two holes. And again, you can measure this or just do it by eye. I'm going to go in about 2.5 inches or so from the ends. And we'll just fit a couple of legs just to see what our angles are like. So the idea is to have the legs on the one side, obviously, fairly symmetrical in line. And then we're just going to tilt it so we can kind of get an idea of where we're going to put our other legs. Yeah, so here's kind of what you're after. I generally just check the depth with my finger. You know, basically 3/4 of a finger deep. And fitting the legs is the easy part. If you've got different diameter legs, you generally want the thicker ones at the back. It just looks a little more proportionally accurate. And what I do is when I put the leg in the hole, obviously sticks generally aren't perfectly straight, so I will just turn them kind of so it's tripoded out as much as possible, so there's not a leg, you know, bending in kind of deal. And then once I'm happy with the position, we'll just tap them in with a rubber mallet or whatever you've got handy. Like that. And there we go. So unless your hole drilling is a lot more accurate than mine, your deer is probably going to have a bit of a wobble. So I just like kind of positioning it so the body is level, and then I will trim whatever is required off the legs so it'll sit nice and level. And I'll just make little adjustments to the leg, just trimming any little bit of leg off until it stops wobbling. As I said, never hurts to pin the leg, just using a wood screw here, and the tenon's coming in at an angle this way, so I'm going to drive the screw in that way so it goes through the tenon on both sides. That leg's never going to come out even if the wood dries and shrinks a little bit. The body done, now we can move on to the head. Again, I'll just look at the piece of wood to try to decide what is the best shape. If it's wider at one end, you kind of want that on the back. You want the nose to taper down smaller. You know, if there's any marks on the wood, you want that on the bottom of the snout. And this is totally your call, but I remove about half of the bark, you know, about half of the length of the head. I will remove this bark just to give it a two-tone appearance and just to shape this a little more into a snout shape. I'm going to be using a angle grinder with a sanding disc on it, but again, you could use a knife or a draw knife, whatever works for you. I don't want to do it in the garage because it's going to make a hell of a mess. So something like that, just to give you an idea. Again, you could use a saw or a draw knife to make this even pointier, but this is how I build them. And we're going to be mounting the head and the neck and everything. Same idea as the leg, mortise and tenon joint. You know, just kind of get what angle you want here, the height. Generally you want a little bit of a forward angle on the neck. This specific piece of wood actually has a little bend in it, so I'm probably going to go straight down almost, and we'll have that little angle there, and then yeah, something like that. Now, just like the legs, I'm going to want the neck back, you know, 2.5 inches or so. You don't want it too close to the front. Just make sure this is going in somewhat straight. Artistic decision time here. What kind of angle you want to put on your head. If we go in straight, we'd have a slight forward angle. I find they actually look a little bit better pointed down a bit, but that's totally your call. You could even have it completely level. I've got the head angled up a little bit, so the hole's going at a slight angle down if I go straight in. And I'm going to go about halfway on the bark here, you know, a good inch, 1.5 inches in from the back. Again, position the head so the most damaged section is down so you don't really see it. Just like that. And yeah, I don't pin this because people like to position the head. Now it's ear fitting time. I mortise and tenon my ears. That's why they're quite long. I'm going to be taking a bit of a tenon on the bottom here to drill into the head. Otherwise, you could just pin them, you know, put a little dowel in, drill a hole, have a dowel, do it that way, or just put a screw through. Whatever works for you. You know, and you kind of want the ears, something like that. So yeah, just kind of decide where you want to put your ear. You want them really upright. I kind of like them out to the side because I'm going to have the antlers coming out of the top here. So, yeah, I guess about there. Just put a little mark. Yep, that looks pretty good. Kind of get where the angle is. Just eyeball it, whatever works for you. There's our 2 ear holes. And now we can just put the ears in. And again, you want them somewhat symmetrical. Something like that, I suppose. Looks not too bad. Finish off our head, presuming of course you want a male deer, we have to fit antlers. Again, these were just cut from the top of those alders. And you can have as elaborate or simple antlers as you want. I don't have any tenon cutters small enough for these little guys, so I'm just going to take the bark off, like so. And then we'll drill a hole kind of back behind the ears. So just kind of figure out where you're going to put them. I'm thinking about there. You know, gauge your drill angle kind of at the same angle that you're holding each antler. Torque them in there, and then just, you know, turn them around. Whatever you think kind of looks good, kind of looks symmetrical. That looks pretty good. Give them a couple of brad nails. or you could glue them. Last thing is the tail, if you want to put one on. I like having the tail at an angle, so the bevel that I cut on it is pretty much vertical. And using the tail as a guide, I can kind of get my drill angle, if that makes any sense. Just like that. And I'll fire a couple of nails in. At this point, our little rustic deer is pretty much finished. I'm just going to dress him up though with a couple of button eyes. I just use a copper nail here. So any rusting doesn't, run down. And I'll finish off with a little fun by putting a nose on him. Could either have Rudolph or just a black nose. I think we're going to go with the Rudolph look. These are just little discs I 3D print. They're 35 millimeters in diameter, 6 millimeters thick, but you could pick something similar up at a craft shop made out of wood. And I just glue them on with household goop. You could use hot glue as well. You could also nail it or screw it on. Is that centered? Pretty good. So that's all there is to building rustic reindeer. You can also dress them up, as you can see. Put some bows on these ones. You can put scarves on them, whatever. And they make a great gift, like I said. People leave them outside all year long, put them in the garden. Keep in mind, if you do put them outside, they are wood, so rain is going to eventually rot them out, depending on the type of wood availability you use. But just as an example here, this little guy I built back in 2005, so he's going on 18 years old now, and he still looks fine, but he does live under our covered veranda, so he never gets rained on. But he's exposed to full sun all the time. Never treated him with anything. And you don't only have to build deer. I built this for my wife a number of years back. It's a little rustic corgi dog to remind us of our dear old Molly. And same build technique used on this as used on the deer. However, it's been finished. You can see the head has been shaped. So that's what I meant about shaping the head. But you can do anything you want. These are very fun and easy little critters to build. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you next time. Happy building.